So, after years of rumors coming and going, MGS3 Snake Eater, arguably the most beloved game in the entire series, is finally getting a next-gen remake in the form of Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. And despite the teaser giving away next to nothing other than the fact that this game actually exists, the statement from Konami's internal team paints a pretty clear picture of what to expect. You got screenshots perfectly recreating the corridors from the virtuous mission segments of the game, the guards are all posed exactly as they were in MGS3, the game is being developed by Konami's internal team with assistance from Virtuos, which has a mostly strong track record, and the game is using all of the old dialogue files from MGS3 instead of getting any of the actors to record new stuff nearly 20 years later. Given all of that, it's safe to assume that Delta Airlines' Snake Eater here is going to be less RE4 Remake and more The Last of Us Part 1. In other words, the exact same game but with a next-gen coat of paint, some quality of life improvements, and probably some streamlining of certain mechanics. The official statement from Konami's team mentions evolving the gameplay with next-gen visuals and a more seamless experience. And if you're not used to the original games, holding down several buttons all at once to go into first-person view aiming, that's not exactly seamless. So if Konami is looking to streamline MGS3 to fit more modern sensibilities, then honestly I'd say smart money is on this game taking the framework of Metal Gear Solid 3DS and adapting that to modern consoles. Just without the terrible performance issues and awful button mapping because, like Peace Walker and Portable Ops, camera movement was relegated to the face button since the 3DS only had one joystick. And to be honest, if that's the case, then I'm all for it. I mean, MGS3 is already getting a port to modern consoles this year, so it wouldn't make sense to just remake the exact same game with shinier graphics, not without some seriously fundamental changes to how it plays. And that's exactly what MGS3DS provided. When you got past the awful button mapping and low frame rate, MGS3DS had everything you could want from a more modern take on MGS3, without losing what made the game so good. You had over-the-shoulder gunplay, crouch movement, more immediate access to the survival viewer, prompts when you grabbed enemies so you wouldn't automatically slit their throats by mistake when trying to interrogate them, and no micro-lag whenever you pause the game, especially during the boss fights. And even though I personally love the gunplay of the original game for its more immediate run-and-gun nature, by all accounts those are the clunkiest parts of MGS3 that most people complain about when we're playing it. So imagine a version of MGS3 that looks like what we're seeing in these screenshots, that also plays more like MGS4, but still has all the corridors, set pieces, creative stealth, and amazing boss fights we all know and love from MGS3. The end result could very well be the most enjoyable version of MGS3 to date. And honestly, what more could you ask for from a game like this? MGS3 is by all accounts a masterpiece, and largely regarded as the best game in the series by most fans and critics alike. If the foundation already ain't broke, but has room for improvements, then personally, I see no reason to be anything but optimistic for this game. Even if it's the same game I've already played a few dozen times over the past near 20 years, a version that evens out some of the kinks that hold this game back that I already love in spite of that, but with smoother controls and much better graphics, that's a version I'm very excited to play. Which is why all the skepticism feels kind of bizarre to me. Now, the reason most people are skeptical is because it's Konami's internal team, and evidently, Konami can't make SpaghettiOs without lighting the house on fire, at least according to some of these folks online. And sure, most of the games that they've released since 2015 have been on shoestring budgets, but speaking as somebody who actually played Survivance all the way through and didn't just play the first few hours, call it garbage, and called it a day, Survivance really wasn't badly made at all. It had a lot of really unexpected and well-made mechanics that I think a lot of folks would have really loved to see in the more conventional Metal Gear game. Not one where all the enemies are mindless techno-zombies with frozen Twizzlers for heads. Design wasn't the issue with Survivance. The issue with that game was a lack of vision and money. Survivance failed because it only had the budget to either be a Metal Gear with zombies game or a fun co-op game, and trying to do both meant it fell short on fleshing out on either one. And nothing shown thus far suggests that any of that is true with this game. So far, the team seem to have a pretty set goal on what they want this game to be, faithfully recreating MGS3 in a shinier coat of paint. And so far, graphically, everything looks great. The actual level design of MGS3 was already some of the better linear level design of the Metal Gear games, and if they're just recreating that with crispier assets, then the moment-to-moment sneaking will be just as fun as the original, given it's the same game but with hopefully smoother controls. And really, that's what's going to elevate Delta most, whether or not the clunkier parts of the original game are actually made better. If they adopt MGS3DS's mechanics, that should actively address most of the game's issues right there. For me, it's the actual survival mechanics of MGS3 that I'm most curious about. As my old review made pretty clear, those were my least favorite parts of the game. Constantly having to pause and sift through multiple menus anytime the end shoots you does nothing for the game except kill the pacing of MGS3's incredible boss fight stone dead. Now, in truth, I don't really know how you improve on that in any meaningful way. But since the game is running faster on stronger hardware, if that kills the micro lag that always occurred whenever you had to pause the game, if nothing else, that'd be a start. That's really all I'm expecting from this game. And judging from what most fans have been harping on about over the last several years, that's really all this game needs to be. an improved version of an already excellent game with just enough streamlining to make it more accessible for everyone without losing the core of what made the original game such a masterpiece. As a safe bet, this is the smartest play Konami could make to get MGS fans back on board and introduce new fans to an old-time classic with a story that many hold in high regard to this day. It's why I'm eager and reasonably optimistic about this game, but at the same time, that's also why I'm not jumping with anticipation either. Like I said, I've played MGS3 from start to finish at least 30 different times since it came out in 2004. It's a short game when you skip cutscenes, and that's to its benefit, because you get so much in so short an amount of time with no fat in the way. It's one of my all-time favorites, but the thing is, if you're going to remake something that's already amazing, why not go for broke and make some serious changes to improve or expand upon the already great foundation? Something being a masterpiece doesn't make it flawless. You can have a 10 out of 10 and still have tons of room for improvement. Or, as RE4 Remake has proven, you can take what's already incredible and dial it up to 11, while also making enough deviations from the original that the OG doesn't become rendered redundant either, giving you reasons to come back to the old game while also coming back for the remake. So while Konami is making the smartest call not compromising the vision of the guy they toss like a bag of dung, MGS3 did have tons of room for improvements, things that could be adjusted or completely redesigned and made for a much better experience as a result. And while I'd hope that Konami proves a little more ambitious with this game, all signs suggest otherwise. But even if that does end up being the case, I'm okay with that. Because if the end result is still a really good game I can jump back into again and again like I have with MGS3 HD, and likely still will with its PS5 and PC ports, then that's all I need. More importantly, this game's existence proves me completely wrong. All this time, I've more or less written off the Metal Gear series as something that would linger forever now that Konami was seemingly done making video games. But that Silent Hill resurgence more or less laid my concerns to rest. Not just because two of those trailers looked genuinely promising and also looked like they actually had some money behind them, but because it proved that Konami wasn't done actually making video games. And for those skeptical that Metal Gear can survive without Kojima, I'd remind you that this series has just as many spin-off titles not written and directed by Kojima as it does canonical titles. And with the exception of Survivance, which again is at least a fun zombie game, and Snake's Revenge from '92, these games are all quite good. Both Ghost Babel and Portable Ops excelled at capturing the essence of classic Metal Gear gameplay while also doing something unique. Ghost Babel especially is one of my favorite games in the entire series. The Metal Gear Acid games may have been turn-based card games, but it was one that had all the strategy and outside-the-box thinking of Metal Gear with genuinely strong writing, characterization, and really fun, outlandish, and unique boss fights that you'd expect from Metal Gear, even if one technically was a zombie gorilla. As far as outsourcing to other studios goes, do I even need to mention how awesome Revengers was and how desperately this world needs a sequel? More than that, Kojima's been all but saying for a long time now that he doesn't want to be shackled to one franchise for the rest of his life. And I'd say that he and Koji Pro are doing just fine with Death Stranding and its upcoming sequel. MGS itself doesn't have to continue for Metal Gear to have a future. If MGS Delta Snake Eater does well, I'm sure we'll probably see more remakes in the same vein down the road, but my genuine hope long term is that Konami continues making new games. We don't need an MGS 6. Instead, you can tell more self-contained one-and-done stories like Ghost Babel, and continue building on the mechanics of these games, delivering more unique settings to infiltrate, more colorful, open-ended boss fights to take on, more unique Metal Gears to confront, and more Snake doing his thing. Who knows what the long-term plan for Metal Gear may end up being? All I know is in the here and now, Snake is back. And I, for one, am very excited to see more of this Snake Eater remake as the months tick by, to see what actual changes to gameplay may be implemented, how everything looks in action, and to see if this version of MGS3 ends up being the best one yet. What are your thoughts on MGS Delta Snake Eater? Are you personally excited to see a remake of MGS3 or seeing anything Metal Gear related finally on the horizon? Are there any other Metal Gear games you'd personally want to see remade in the future? And do you want Konami to start making more self-contained Metal Gear spin-off games? Whatever your thoughts, whether you agreed or disagreed, let me know in the comments. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so this dumb algorithm does its thing. Anyway, thanks for watching. Also, remember how I said I was going to try and do one review a month at the end of 2021? That aged well, didn't it?